Welcome. Welcome to Therapy Notes. This is a site dedicated to exploring issues, concerns, concepts, topics that I have worked with over the years of being a therapist. This is not meant to diagnose or treat any mental disorder, and it's for information and educational purposes only. Self-esteem, making mistakes. Oh boy. Is this a really hot topic? People with self-esteem issues, and self-esteem, again, is how I feel about me, right? We are looking for an accurate and balanced perception of the self, and we know that a lot of people who come to therapy struggle with self-esteem. It impacts a lot of the reasons why they're there. When we assess that, we're looking for what is their internal strength, their internal resources that they can draw off of that will help them deal with whatever they're dealing with. The lower the self-esteem, the more difficult whatever challenge they have that they're coming to therapy for. I don't like the dichotomy of high self-esteem, low self-esteem. I don't tend to use the term high self-esteem. I think there are a lot of misperceptions out there about what it means to have high self-esteem, and I often hear people talking about high self-esteem people, and it sounds like they're talking about people who have an overinflated sense of self, people who are arrogant, people who think they're better than other people. That's not really what high self-esteemers do. So I tend to use the term healthy self-esteem and low self-esteem as opposed to high and low. And so I think because the healthier a person's self-esteem is, the better they cope with life. They do. They cope better with life. They actually have better relationships, and they're easier to get along with. They're really, in the most part, people with healthy self-esteem make good friends, they make good partners, they make good workers. They do not look up or down on anyone. And that's a phrase that you'll hear me use a lot, and I'll do a separate video on that, because I just think having a view of humanity as we're all in it together, we're all basically trying to do our best here. I mean, some people are using very unhealthy ways to get through life, but for the most part, if we look at the people around us as just human beings like us, if you start there, I think you're going to end up in a better place overall. So, but people with low self-esteem, people that really struggle with self-esteem, have a very imbalanced view of themselves. They have a very negative view of the self. They tend to focus and exaggerate the negative aspects of themselves, their imperfections, their slights, their inadequacies. You know, I might be inadequate at math, which I am. They tend to exaggerate those imperfections and tend to make them into more of the center core of who they are. Mistakes tend to create a great deal of distress for people with low self-esteem. Mistakes are almost crippling for some people with low self-esteem. And let me explain to you kind of how they look at it. When we were born, right, we had to start learning how to do everything. We couldn't walk, we couldn't sit up, we couldn't eat, feed ourselves, we couldn't do anything. And so life was about trial and error. And there's trial and there's error. And error is mistakes, right? So babies, little children accept that they may try several times to reach for a toy, they may try several times to walk, they may try several times to do something and fail, and fail, and fail, and fail, and fail. And they just blow that off. They might get a little frustrated, maybe cry, but for the most part, Babies just know that trial and error, they don't know, but they use a trial and error format to learn. And so error is part of learning. For a low self-esteemer, somewhere they learned that mistakes are intolerable. Now, they might have been raised by a family that's very, very concerned about getting their kids to a good place and thought that mistakes were to be something the kid worked hard not to do, to commit. And again, that may be well-intentioned parents or not, but it left a message for the kid that making mistakes was intolerable. For some people, they equate making a mistake with being a mistake. Okay? Making a mistake is not the same as being a mistake, but for a low self-esteemer, it is. It's if I make an error in judgment, I make an error in an action, it proves that I'm worthless. And some of you may think, gee, that's ridiculous. That makes no sense. Unfortunately, for the person with low self-esteem, that does make sense. They view it as a mistake is equivalent to being stupid. Now, we can back up, and I'm sure there's somebody out there saying, wow, some mistakes are a really big deal. Absolutely. There are mistakes out there that are a big deal, and I'm not suggesting that mistakes are blown off as, who cares? So I'll get to that in a second. Because we're not saying that there aren't big mistakes. But for the low self-esteemer, every mistake is a big mistake. Every mistake is a big mistake. So, mom, busy in the morning, trying to get everybody out the door, right? She says, it's time for my daughter's ballet classes. They're tonight after school. So she throws the ballet shoes in the backpack, sends a kid off to school. Today's soccer practice. Can't really play soccer in ballet shoes. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. That's a legitimate mistake. Is she a horrible mom? Is she a person who doesn't deserve to be a mom? Does she believe her child would be better off if she had a different mom? This is what we're talking about is, okay, I made a mistake. All right, well, it is a mistake. I mean, you can't play soccer in ballet shoes. But you're not a mistake. You're a mom who made a mistake. You're not a mom who is a mistake. And this is where self-esteem issues come into play. Yes, there can be very serious mistakes made. You fail to pay your electric bill and the electricity gets turned off. Big mistake. Got to work on that. You don't pay your bills on time. Something happens. There are big mistakes. I'm not going to say that there aren't big mistakes. The problem with making you the mistake is there's no value in that. You can't get to a better place by beating yourself up. So what we try to do is help the person understand what can you do with that mistake other than beat yourself up, which takes you nowhere except down. What can you do with that mistake? And so over the years, I've kind of developed this sort of mindset as I've grappled with people and struggled to hear through, okay, how in the world can this person, we're not going to throw away the mistake and say it doesn't matter. Because as a lot of people probably thought, you can't just dismiss every mistake you make. I mean, the older you get, the more serious your mistakes can get. I mean, babies can make serious mistakes too, but you know what I'm saying. So we don't want mistakes to be shrugged off as, I made a mistake, no big deal, right? So I like to think of it like this, and pardon my language, but I look at mistakes as crap. We've done something, oh crap, oh crap. So we've all done crap in our life, okay? In fact, some of us have probably looked back over our life, and when we think of some of the mistakes we've made, we wince. It's like, ooh, I can't believe I did that, right? So all of us have made errors in judgment. All of us have done things that we're not particularly proud of or just feel embarrassed by. Okay, all right. So I'm going to ask, what's the difference between crap and manure? What's the difference between crap and manure, right? Well, crap is just crap. I mean, it's stinky and it's yucky and it's whatever. But manure is crap that's been turned into something that has real value to it, right? We put manure on it fertilizes our flowers, our plants, our vegetables. It's something that has real value, that grows something beautiful out of it. So what I try to do with people who have self-esteem issues and they're beating themselves up and telling themselves they're a terrible mom or they've done these horrible things, they can't let it go, it's what can you do with what you did to make you a better version of yourself? How can you move that situation into a better place? Again, you can say to yourself, you know what? This is proof that I need a better way to organize my day, okay? We had a holiday on Monday. I woke up this morning and forgot it was Tuesday. I kept thinking in my mind it was Monday. She has ballet on Monday, but we didn't have it because it was a holiday. And I just got sidetracked because I lost track of which day was what. So I'm going to put a calendar in the kitchen, or I'm going to put a message on my phone, or I'm going to make some effort to remove that possible error. Does that mean it will never happen again? No. But I'm making an effort to learn from my mistake. I take the mistake, try to break it down into a problem to solve instead of an indictment against the self. So again, mistakes come to that person with self-esteem in a way that goes deep inside who they are. It creates mood instability. You know, a person can just become obsessed in their minds over how stupid I am, how could I do that, what's wrong with me. It can create conflict in relationships. I've worked with people who are very sensitive to making mistakes at work, and if there's even a hint that they might have made an error in judgment, you know, didn't send out the proper, you know, email message or something, an incredible sense of anxiety and defensiveness over it. They go home and they just think and think and think and think about it and fear the worst will happen. And this makes tension in that work environment. It makes tension inside themselves. There's so much more anxiety and stress in the body when we have a mind filled with negative thoughts about the self. And like I said, it's not to dismiss the mistake. It's not we're saying, well, mistakes don't matter. It's okay to make mistakes. Laugh it off, shrug it off, don't care about it. It's when you recognize you've made a mistake, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do next? How are you going to take that mistake and learn from it? Just like a baby would do. If it reached for something or fell down or tried to crawl and it didn't work, they're always trying to figure out how to master that. And that's what life is all about. It's a journey as opposed to a destination. It's about learning instead of trying to be perfect. So getting away from that perfectionism thing, which often we see with some people with anxiety as well as self-esteem issues. But mistakes for a person with self-esteem issues becomes a really, really powerful part of what keeps them from having the kind of contentment, sort of the peace that they could have because this fear of mistakes. And then if there is a mistake, then that really does sets off that feeling of inadequacy. So mistakes, bad stuff for people with self-esteem, but it can be fixed. It can be addressed. Thank you for coming. I hope you found this informative. If there are issues or topics that you'd like to see me talk about, please put them in the comments below.